My earliest memory of Leo is not of his face, but of his shadow. I was 10, hiding behind the thick velvet curtain in our living room, watching my older brother, Mark, and his new best friend. They were 15, all clumsy limbs and cracking voices, playing video games on the worn-out rug. But Leo was different. Even then, he had a stillness about him. Where Mark was loud and explosive, Leo was quiet, observant. The setting sun streamed through the window, casting his long shadow across the floor, and I remember thinking it looked like a king's silhouette. For 7 years, that shadow was a constant in our house. Leo became my brother's other half, and in many ways, mine too. He was the one who'd patiently teach me how to throw a spiral with a football in the backyard when Mark got frustrated and gave up. He was the one who, when I was 16 and painfully awkward, found the mix CD I'd made, full of angsty, indie love songs I'd never admit to liking, and instead of teasing me, simply said, "You have good taste, Eli." That was the year everything changed. The year the shadow became a man, and I started to see him not as my brother's friend, but as Leo. It was the summer before his senior year of college. He was staying with us for a few weeks, a buffer between semesters and his demanding life as a scholarship student with the weight of his family's expectations on his broad shoulders. One night, I found him on the back porch, staring up at the stars, a rare look of vulnerability on his usually composed face. "You okay?" I asked, my voice softer than I intended. He didn't look at me. "Just thinking. It's a lot, you know? Everyone watching. Everyone waiting for you to succeed." "I'm not waiting," I said, leaning against the railing beside him. "I already know you will." He finally turned his head, and the moonlight caught in his hazel eyes, turning them to liquid gold. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and it felt like the air had been sucked right out of the world. I wasn't just Eli, the kid brother. I was me. "You're different, Eli," he whispered, and his voice was a low thrum that vibrated in my chest. That was the beginning of a secret stolen summer. Glances held a second too long, accidental brushes of hands when passing a soda can. The electric tension that would crackle in the room when we were left alone together. We were a live wire, sparking with something unspoken and terrifying and beautiful. The climax of it all was the night before he left. Mark was out. My parents were asleep. We were in the basement, the blue light of the television flickering across our faces as the credits of a movie rolled. The silence was deafening, filled with everything we hadn't dared to say. "Eli," he said, my name a prayer on his lips. I turned to him, my heart a wild drum against my ribs, and then he kissed me. It wasn't a practiced kiss. It was desperate and sweet and tasted of mint and the faint bitterness of fear. It was my first kiss, and it shattered me. When we broke apart, we were both breathing like we'd run a marathon. "I have to go tomorrow," he said, his forehead resting against mine, his eyes squeezed shut. "I know. It's not. I can't. My family, Mark." The words were fragments, pieces of the impossible puzzle we were in. "I know," I repeated, my voice cracking. I did know. Coming from a traditional background, Leo's future was a narrow, meticulously planned path. Medical school, a good job, a nice girl. There was no room for me in that picture. He cupped my face, his thumb stroking my cheekbone with a reverence that made me want to cry. "When I come back," he whispered, his voice fierce with a promise he had no right to make. "When I'm my own man, when I can breathe, I'll come back for you, Eli. I promise." He kissed me again, a seal on that vow. It was a kiss full of hope and heartbreak, a kiss that felt like both a beginning and an end. The next morning, he was gone. A handshake for Mark, a hug for me that was a fraction too long, a look that held the weight of our secret. And then nothing. For the first few months, there were texts. Short, careful. "How's school?" "Thinking of you." Then they became fewer. Then they stopped altogether. My messages turned into lonely blue bubbles in a void, unanswered. The news came through Mark. A casual bomb dropped over dinner. "Yeah, so Leo's dating some pre-med genius. His mom is thrilled. Sent me a picture. They look perfect together. The world didn't stop. It just got very, very quiet. The promise had been broken. The vow had been just a beautiful, desperate lie whispered in the dark to a boy who was foolish enough to believe it. I spent the next 7 years building a life around that silence. I moved out, got a job as a graphic designer, dated nice, safe men who didn't make promises they couldn't keep. I packed Leo away in a box labeled First Heartbreak and tried to forget the feel of his lips on mine. I thought I'd succeeded. I thought the ghost of him had finally faded. I was wrong. It was a rainy Thursday evening when the ghost walked right back into my life. I was at an art gallery opening for a friend, holding a glass of cheap wine and pretending to understand the deeper meaning behind a sculpture that looked like a tangled paperclip. And then I saw him. Across the room, standing near a large abstract painting, was Leo. He was older, obviously. The lanky boy had filled out into a man with broad shoulders that strained against the fabric of his dark suit. His face was more angular, more defined, with a faint crease between his eyebrows that hadn't been there before. But his eyes, they were the same, and they were fixed directly on me. Time folded in on itself. The noise of the gallery faded into a distant hum. My heart didn't just skip a beat. It stuttered to a complete stop before slamming against my ribs with a painful, bruising force. He looked stunned, as if he'd seen a ghost himself. He began to move toward me, weaving through the crowd with a determined grace. My fight-or-flight response screamed at me to run, but my feet were rooted to the spot. He stopped a few feet away, close enough that I could see the rain droplets still clinging to his jacket. "Eli," he said, and my name on his lips after 7 years was a physical blow. His voice was deeper, richer, but it was undeniably him. All I could do was stare. The carefully constructed walls around my heart cracked and splintered with that one word. "Leo," I finally managed, my voice a stranger's. "What are you doing here?" He offered a small, hesitant smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "The better question is, what are you doing here? You hate these things," he remembered. Of course he remembered. I hated the pretension, the small talk. He used to bring me snacks during my brother's forced family game nights because he knew I hated those too. "A friend is showing her work," I said, gesturing vaguely with my wine glass. I was proud of how steady my hand was. "I didn't know you were back in the city." "Just got back a few weeks ago," he said, his eyes never leaving mine. They were searching for something. I took a job at County General. I'm a cardiologist now." "Ah," I said, the sound hollow. "So the plan worked out? Congratulations?" The words came out sharper than I intended, laced with the old festering hurt. He flinched almost imperceptibly. "Eli, He was cut off by a sleek, smiling man in a perfectly tailored suit who appeared at his elbow. "Leo, darling, there you are. Dr. Evans is eager to talk to you about the charity auction." Leo looked torn, his gaze flicking between me and the man whose hand was now possessively on his arm. "Julian, yes. Just a moment. This is an old friend?" "Eli." Julian turned a brilliant, practiced smile on me. It didn't reach his eyes either. "Lovely to meet you." "Eli, was it? Leo's told me so much about his childhood with Mark. You must be the little brother." The dismissal was expert, elegant, and brutal. I was relegated to a footnote in Leo's past, a side character in someone else's story. "That's me," I said, forcing a smile of my own. "The little brother." "Well, I won't keep you. It was surprising to see you, Leo, Julian." I didn't wait for a response. I turned and walked away, my spine straight, my head high, navigating through the crowd like a ship through a fog I couldn't see. I could feel his eyes on my back until I disappeared into the crowd. I made it outside into the cool, rainy night before I let myself fall apart. I leaned against the cold brick wall of the building, gulping in the damp air, trying to steady my shaking hands. 7 years. 7 years of carefully moving on, and in a single 5-minute conversation, he had dragged me right back to that porch, to that kiss, to that broken promise. The worst part wasn't the shock or the hurt, or even Julian's polished dismissal. The worst part was the traitorous, undeniable leap of my heart when I first saw him. A leap that felt terrifyingly like hope. Part 2. The space between us. Word count, 11920. The rain soaked through my jacket, a cold shock that grounded me. I pushed off the wall and started walking with no destination in mind, just putting one foot in front of the other. The city lights blurred and swam in the wet pavement, reflections of a world that had just been tilted off its axis. Cardiologist. Of course he was. He had achieved everything that was expected of him. He had run the straight and narrow path perfectly, and he had arrived. And he had a Julian. Someone polished, successful, who fit seamlessly into the life of a brilliant doctor. A life that had no place for a graphic designer who still listened to angsty indie music and preferred sweatpants to suits. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my brother, Mark. Hey, heard Leo ran into you tonight. Small world. He just texted me, said you looked good. I stopped walking, staring at the screen. He looked good. That's what he'd told my brother. A safe, neutral, utterly meaningless observation. The anger that rose in me was hot and sudden. He had no right. No right to see me, to comment on me, to text my brother about me as if we were all just old pals. I didn't reply. I shoved my phone back into my pocket and hailed a cab. The need to be home behind my own walls, suddenly overwhelming. The next few days were an exercise in forced normalcy. I went to work. I met friends for coffee. I scrolled mindlessly through dating apps, swiping left on every face that wasn't his. I was trying to prove to myself that I was over it, that the encounter had been a minor blip. It was a lie. Leo was everywhere. In the song that came on the coffee shop radio, the one from that mix CD he'd found. In the smell of rain on concrete. In the quiet of my apartment, which felt emptier than it ever had before. 3 days after the gallery, another text came. This time, it wasn't from my brother. The number was unfamiliar, but my soul knew it before my brain did. Unknown. Number. Eli. It's Leo. I got your number from Mark. I hope that's okay. My heart launched itself into my throat. I stared at the message, my thumbs hovering over the screen. Every instinct told me to delete it, to block the number, to protect the fragile peace I'd built. But the part of me that was still that 16-year-old boy on the porch, the part that remembered the vow in his kiss, won out. Me. It's fine. The 3 dancing dots appeared immediately, as if he'd been waiting, phone in hand. Leo, I'm sorry about the other night. Julian can be a lot. I didn't get to say what I wanted to say. Me. And what was that? The dots danced, then stopped, then danced again. He was nervous. Leo, that I'm sorry. For everything. That I'd like to see you, to talk, properly. 1,000 sarcastic replies flew through my mind. Sorry for what? For breaking my heart? For disappearing? For making me feel like a secret? But none of them made it to the screen. Because the truth was, I wanted to see him too. I needed to. I needed to look him in the eye and maybe, finally, get the closure I'd been denied 7 years ago. Me, talk about what? Leo, the past. The present. Why I left. Why I came back. Please, Eli, just coffee. And so against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a small, quiet cafe tucked away on a side street, far from the trendy galleries and places Julian might frequent. I got there first, choosing a table in the corner, my hands wrapped tightly around a mug of tea I didn't drink. When he walked in, he looked different than he had at the gallery. He wore dark jeans and a simple gray sweater, and he looked tired. The perfectly composed doctor was gone, replaced by someone more real, more vulnerable, more like the boy I remembered. He saw me and offered a small, hesitant smile as he slid into the chair opposite me. Hi. Hi. The silence stretched, thick and heavy with unsaid words. You look, he began, then stopped, shaking his head. I already said that to Mark. It sounded stupid then, too. You look like Eli. It's been 7 years, Leo. I'm not the same Eli. I know, he said, his gaze intense. I can see that. You're more. You've grown into yourself. You seem sure of who you are? It's easier to be sure of yourself when you're not living in someone else's shadow, I said, the barb intentional. He flinched, nodding slowly. I deserve that. He took a deep breath. I'm sorry, Eli. I am so sorry for how I left. For the radio silence. For breaking my promise. There isn't a day that's gone by that I haven't thought about it. About you. Why did you? The question came out raw. stripped of any pretense. Was it the pressure? Your family? Was it just easier? He stared into his black coffee as if the answers were written in the dark liquid. All of that. And none of it. It was terror, Eli. Pure, unadulterated terror. He finally looked up, and his eyes were haunted. I was 22. I was the first in my family to go to college on a scholarship I could lose if I put a foot wrong. My mother had worked 3 jobs her whole life to give me that shot. The weight of it. It was crushing me. And then there was you. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. You were this incredible, bright, beautiful thing. And what I felt for you, it was so big. It terrified me even more than failing. Because if I let myself have that, if I embraced it, I knew I would lose everything else. My family, my future, everything I'd been taught to work for. I was a coward. I chose the path of least resistance. I thought I could box it up, put it away, and become the person I was supposed to be. And did you? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Become that person? A sad smile touched his lips. I became a cardiologist. I bought a nice condo. I dated Julian, who is everything my family could ever want for me. Smart, successful, from a good family. He paused. And I was miserable. A perfect, polished, miserable shell. What happened? I was on a treadmill running toward a finish line I didn't even want to cross, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I was living a life that was a monument to other people's expectations. And one day I just stopped. I ended things with Julian. I quit the prestigious fellowship at the big-name hospital that was making me sick with stress. I applied for the job here at County General. A fresh start. My start. On my terms. He reached across the table, stopping just short of touching my hand. I came back for me, Eli. But a huge part of for me was the hope that I might find you again. That I might be able to look you in the eye and apologize. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to